Hello.
Hi. Anyways, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
thanks for joining in for our chat today.
Mm.
It's been a while. What's how's the last couple of weeks and months been for you?
Yeah, it has been a while indeed. My old colleague. It's been a long time. The last couple of months and weeks, it's been hectic. It's definitely been hectic, but I guess we can speak about it a bit.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. So, I mean, as I say, I'm glad you've agreed to join in on one of our new episodes of the halftime chat. And what this format was, it was sort of a called social welfare, social well-being, but it was a way of talking to people in various functions of life across the globe, understanding
Mm.
how what they're doing in their ways to make a difference in the world,
Mm.
but also understanding how they battle and manage mental health and well-being and welfare and things like that. It's strange when we did agree to have this interview a couple of weeks ago. The events of this past week hadn't hadn't come up, so there's quite a bit that we'll talk about that and get your experience
Okay.
in Holland as well here in the UK and when you're at
Yeah.
Cambridge. But it'll be good to introduce yourself
Yes.
and at least just name, background, and stuff, so we can go from there.
Okay. So my name is Raisa Kumaga, and I'm a trainee counseling psychologist. And I'm Ghanaian, but I was born and raised in Netherlands, and then I moved to the UK to
Netherlands,
study there.
that's Holland, right?
Holland. Well, we don't say Holland anymore, actually. It
Okay,
is
you
the
don't say Holland.
Netherlands. No, it is the Netherlands at the moment. So yes, I moved to the UK to study and stayed here. And at the moment, I am training to become a counseling psychologist.
Okay,
But previously, I've worked as a social worker and obviously with you, working with children and young people. So
okay,
that's where I'm at the moment. I'm
okay.
outside, as you guys can see. It's lockdown mode, so it's trying to balance, everyone that's living in the same proximity, how to work a way to, yeah, to get each other space, I guess. But luckily, it's not raining and the sun is shining, and I can see blue skies. So
But how's
hopefully,
that been for you? Can you mention about work at
sorry, what
home?
did
I
you
mean,
say?
I said, how's that been? Are you because I think with the lockdown, a lot of people have had to work from home and
Mm.
remotely. I mean, how's that been for you?
It's been interesting. I think at first I was quite okay with it. I was like, oh, that's nice. I can just work at home. But as months have progressed, it can be quite difficult to find. And I guess it also depends on the kind of apartment or accommodation you're in, with who you're living with, whether you have children or not, and trying to balance, work and life as well. Because after my 9 to 5 is done, I'm supposed to be feeling like, oh, okay, I'm at home, I can relax, I can calm down, but I'm still in the same space where I was doing my work. So
Okay,
that's one point that I've noticed that is a challenge. And then the other point is, having to live with people, so and they have their own lives, their own work and things they're doing. So finding a way to have that space where I can do what I have to do, but the other person as well has their own space. And we also have to not forget that there are a lot of people that might not have the technological means to work at home. I mean, I have,
mm,
the privilege to have a laptop and a phone, but not everyone has that to work or to study. So there are
mm,
definitely challenges with COVID-19 at the moment in terms of workplace. But I think there are more challenges, such as the high disproportionate rate of death with the BME community.
yeah.
So I think, yeah, at the moment, this period of time in 2020 is very revolutionary. It's a historical moment with a lot of underlying process that were already there really coming up
Mm,
to the forefront.
okay. Well, I think we jumped to working from home, but it'd be interesting just to get to go back a little bit from the fact
Mm,
that yes, you were your parents, you said, are from are Ghanaian, but you were born in the Netherlands. Most of us know it as Holland, and but what was it like growing up in the Netherlands, Holland, as you know, parents are from Ghana, and unlike the UK, not as big. So what was it like for you growing up?
Mm. Growing up in the Netherlands, yeah, it's interesting because people often view Netherlands as this very tolerant country where weed is legal and prostitution. You can just go, to an area in Amsterdam. You can get sex whenever you want. Um, but there's another part of the Netherlands where there is racism, when there is, inequality, which I definitely have experienced from a young age, where I could notice that I'm different to the others,
Wow.
especially because we have a holiday called Black Pete
Black,
and
what, Black
Sinterklaas.
what?
Black Pete and
Okay.
Sinterklaas, yes. So it's a holiday that the Dutch people celebrate in December before Christmas. And what you'll see is you have like a person that looks like Santa Claus, and he has a helper called Black Pete. So that's a white person that would put basically blackface on his
Oh,
face. And you will see that everywhere in the streets. You'll have portraits and character, how do you say this, images of this helper um, who is basically a blackface person. And it's definitely a holiday that we have, the black community, we've been trying to fight against it because it is racial. It's a racial aspect. It's inherently racism to paint yourself black and then go around the streets and have whole big holidays when we have black people in the Netherlands. So
so
that was definitely challenging.
but you've got a lot of prominent black athletes in Holland playing football or
Mm.
soccer. I would have thought that they would have had a voice and really people would have listened to that.
It's a complex dynamic. I mean, we have been, trying to raise our voice for years, and I think it has been more recently than in my childhood, where the voice wasn't there, and that might be because it was a different generation. It was my parents' generation, and my parents' generation was like, we came to this country and to give you a better life. That was the generation and the messages that my parents would give me. So it was more like a hush hush, let's just continue. And sorry, I'll just wait for a minute.
Okay, sorry.
So yeah, let's just keep it quiet, just do what you have to do, just work two times harder, because yes, we are black people when life is a bit harder, but don't say anything, just keep on moving. And I think that the next generation had a bit of a different position in that they were like, no, we're not going to hush and just move on. We're going to put a stand and say this tradition, this holiday is not right at all. It's actually dehumanizing black people that look like us.
Hmm. Okay.
Mm.
And since, I mean, you're saying that it's getting to a point where people are slowly agreeing to it?
Well, it's been a hard battle. I can see that.
Somebody mentioned, don't forget being called, is
Called
it
Boku. Boku,
Boku?
yes,
What,
that's a phrase in the Netherlands actually. It's
okay, what kind of phrase is that?
So Boku basically is kind of like a denigrating words that they use to black people, and I think it's a word that if Rebecca can correct me if I'm wrong, is a Surinamese word from people that live in that are from Suriname. And they would basically describe black people with that word because I think the connotation is related to smelly fish.
Wow.
So there was this notion that black people from Africa, um, they live in huts. They smell like fish because we bake tilapia and all these dried fish. We all those kind of prejudices about black people were, I guess, put in this word boku. So I guess what she's trying to say is, besides the disparities between white people in the Netherlands and black people in the Netherlands, there were also issues within the black community. So people that were colonized by the Dutch people, so those are the Surinamese people, they would have a negative
Yeah.
stance towards the black people from Africa, like me.
Okay. Okay.
And what I think,
Wow.
um, the reason for that discourse was because the colonized countries by the countries colonized by the Dutch people.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of self-hate and not understanding where they're coming from, which is from Africa. So I can definitely see that a lot, with the years, that people from Suriname, the Caribbean, understanding that they are first and foremost African,
Mm.
which I guess is part of this whole Black liberation, of actually understanding who we are as a person, as an identity, and also as a group.
Mm.
But yeah, so that was the kind of historical aspect of the
Okay.
word Boku.
Well, I think, I mean, I was hoping to get to this part probably towards the end, but I guess since we've started, I wanted to see how you think the tragic events coming out of North America with George Floyd, how that has resonated with people in Holland, and
Mm.
do you think that there's an awakening and an awareness that, we need to change, or what are your thoughts? Or have you even spoken to people back home?
Mm. I think I think what has been happening is it's very painful. It has definitely impacted even myself. I've been very tired. I've been angry. I've been sad. I've been worried about my family in America, but also worried about the state of the world in countries that I'm living in, like UK, but also the Netherlands, that this injustice towards Black people has been going on for years and years and years, and we just tired and fed up. We're fed up with it. And I think what is happening now is that people are just saying enough is enough. We need to really have a change now, because we've been protesting for years. This has been happening for years. And I think those are kind of things that we're seeing in the Netherlands as well, that people are protesting, that people are saying like why people need to really investigate themselves with those with the white supremacist ideas that they have towards Black people, and that we need to dismantle institutions and things like that. And I guess in the Netherlands, they are focusing on what happened to George Floyd, but they're also recognizing that in the Netherlands, there's a problem as well. There's Black Pete, that's a problem. There's institutional racism, that is a problem. So
Yeah.
I think we're seeing it everywhere in the world, that people are just fed up, and we had enough.
Mm. I mean, but you mentioned that it's affected you personally. I mean,
Hmm.
for me, I mean, I watched the event. It was sad. I think at the back of my head, I'm wondering, these guys are going to get away with it. They may get arrested, but they may not get convicted, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Because I remember the Rodney King situation. But because we've seen a number of other incidents, it's it just felt like just another incident. Not like another incident, but just felt like, yeah, they're going to get away with it, and it's not going to be a bigger deal. Um, But what has subsequently happened is the wave of the anger, and everyone's saying, okay, that's enough, it's enough. Um, but I think it hadn't, and I won't say I've been desensitized from it. It's just because when you've seen it so often, you're like, well, just another thing. I've been,
Hmm.
I've been in a sense, I can't even pick up the word, but I've been encouraged by the growing movement of things. But the impact, you said it really impacted you more so than others. Why is that?
Well, I think it's a group of people that are in this shared experience where we just feel very, very hurt by the matter of things at the moment in the world, and in police brutality, but also in institutions. And I think what I've noticed actually, which could be quite interesting to talk about, because I would like to hear your view about this.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed is there's a bit of a difference between the Black people that were born and raised in Western countries, um, in and the people that are from the continent. in terms of that, maybe they have experience of racism, but it's in a different way. It's a different lived experience that they have than the people here that were born and raised in Europe. So, for example, for me, I had racism since the moment that I was born, and so this has been lived with me and has shaped me, and as has been quite traumatic. It's racial trauma. It has impacted my view of self, and I had to do a lot of work on understanding that some of the things, that I've experienced, some of the family dynamics are also part of this oppression
Mm.
um, that has impacted my psychology. So I think there's a difference with maybe how people are responding to what's going on, that there is maybe a shared experience of hurt and of this is unfair, but for some people it maybe touches a bit more because of this lifetime experience of racism. And I think and then this is my assumption, so you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I wonder that if with the people from the continent, because they have been in communities where everyone was black, there was no necessarily othering, and maybe so they have a bit of a different experience, attitude, or view around um, things like this. But that's my assumption. So I wonder what you think of that.
I can only give my experience because I was born in the UK, in Liverpool, and when I was around 9 or 10, moved to Nigeria, and when I was about 18, moved to America, so for 10 years.
Mm,
So I've got experience across 3 continents, and I think
mm,
growing up here in the UK at that time, what you got is what you see. If somebody was racially abusive towards you, you just had to live with it. But as a kid, it wasn't as overt, so and so you managed. I think what changed is when I moved to Nigeria and
mm,
a land of almost 200 million people, all the same color. I recognized that people there was differences with people's tribes, different ethnic groups. There was differences
mm,
with people's religion, and even though we were all black in Nigeria, living in Africa, we were still one group oppressing the other, one group taking advantage of the other, one group discriminating against the other. And
mm,
so that really shaped my view about, well, if we're all the same color, we're still finding differences and we're still struggling. And so when I was about 18, I went to university in America, and I actually went to Alabama, Selma, Alabama. And if anyone has done their history, Selma, Alabama is
mm.
where
Yes.
Martin Luther King marched. So
Yep.
I moved to Selma, Alabama in '92.
Mm,
The mayor of the city in '92, when I moved there, was the mayor in '68 when Martin Luther King came to march. So he was still the mayor
wow.
from '68. He
Wow.
was still the mayor of the town. So of course I'm freaking out, like, wow, what kind
Mm,
of environment have I joined where the same guy is there? But throughout the 10 plus years I lived in America, I moved across, and what was different, I think, because of the experience of living in an African country where I mentioned that even if we all look alike, we're still having our differences. I think I
mm,
was able to say, you know what, not, they say thick as skin. You almost say that people are people, and they would
mm,
find a way of finding a difference in you.
mhm,
They would find a difference because of your color, but if we're the same color, or your tribe, if we're the same tribe, well, you're light skinned and I'm dark skinned.
mhm,
You're from this particular tribe and I'm from this tribe. So there was a sense that they were different. So as I said, it's a benefit I've had, and I don't know if everyone else shares that, but that's how I see it differently. So
mm,
hence, I can see racism everywhere, and I can be disappointed by it. I can be upset by it, and I don't just bear it and grin. But what I tend to do is it's like, okay, I start thinking, this isn't the end. I've still got other things to do, and I'm not going to be limited by what another person's judgment on me.
mm,
But I mean, but for yourself, I mean, I guess it's um, experiencing that situation out in the Netherlands, Holland. moving to the UK, going to do a master's in Cambridge. How was that like? Did you see that? Oh, was the racial situation different in when you moved to the UK? Did you feel as if, oh, this is relaxing, I could, or what did you find it even worse, or what was it different?
It's quite interesting because just like how you have this experience of different being in different countries, it's similar to where I grew up in this country where there's a pseudo tolerance, but still underlying racism, and then I go to the UK thinking, oh, there are so many people that are black in the UK and doing like amazing things and things like that. But then when I went to Cambridge, it was still like a shock because even though London is very multicultural, Cambridge is predominantly white. So from moving from a place where it's quite multicultural, Rotterdam is quite multicultural, then to a place where it's completely white was challenging. And what I noticed in Cambridge was the kind of response they had to someone like me. There was only two people in my course as well, um, and the difficulties were again because of how elitist Cambridge University is. And so, although I learned so much and I've built so many great relationships with people,
Mhm.
um, the elitism and the racism just makes it really hard for a black person to feel that they are part of that university. And I think my reaction to that was trying to find groups where I did feel belong. So I kind of went to like black Caribbean societies, African societies, to have to share with them my experience and actually know that I'm not crazy because these people have the same experience as me.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, some of the things that I experienced in Cambridge was really more individually, and also some lecturers that are not inclusive with their curriculum. But I think that's a problem that every university is having. That the curriculum is just very white. Um, but it's definitely experiences in terms of how individuals in colleges would respond to me as a black person. So they would say like, oh, they wouldn't believe that I was a student at Cambridge. So every time I was the person that had to show my ID, but then the white group that comes after me, they're just giving a pause. So things like that, subtle microaggressions that
Mhm.
make you then feel like, okay, so they don't see me as someone that belongs to this university, this institution, as Cambridge University, and also that they just are very kind of subtly racist, basically, giving those kind of hints, implicit hints that are actually, othering me and um,
Mhm.
and seeing me as inferior and not smart enough to be here at Cambridge. So there was definitely periods of time where I thought like, how did I even end up here in this Cambridge University? Do I belong here? Am I really that smart? Things like that, just because of their behavior towards me and the constant kind of um, yeah, yeah, the implicit behavior that they had towards me that made me question my being and my intelligence.
But then how did that experience shape you? I mean, not just the time that you were there, but subsequently leaving and looking forward. I guess the first part was what kept you going, and then the
Mm,
second part is that how has it shaped you going forward?
mm. Well, what kept me going is that even though I experienced all of this, the fact that I was part of a group that had a shared experience made me feel like, okay, this is just an institutional thing going on and racist elements going on, and it's not me. And I'm having to separate that and not internalize these messages. And it just made me, and I also feel like in Cambridge, that was a part where I became a bit more passionate and very much more em- emancipatory about the black community, that I felt like, you know, this shouldn't be the way to be. I shouldn't be feeling like this, and it's wrong. Um,
Oh,
so in
okay.
Cambridge, that's where I started protesting. That's because there was a lot of things happening in America as well. So that was a time that I was protesting. That's for the time where I was like, you know what, I'm going to do my research study about racial and ethnic identity. It really kind of grew my spirit and resistance towards these systems and white supremacy.
Now, you mentioned white supremacy? Do you think that this is something that it's a conscious thing, or is it unconscious? Do you think systemically that's like we need to put these black people in their place and put them down, or do you think it is very unconscious, but that what they're doing and deep down, if they know what they're doing, they wouldn't do it? Or what from your own experience, what would you think?
I think it's a complex dynamic. It's very complex. People talk about unconscious bias. People talk about institutional racism. I've used those terms, but I think it's it's a complex dynamic, and there are people that probably, are just plain racist that they just can't see, and they actually really believe that they're superior. And I think there are also people that have this white privilege hanging around them and because they're white, but not necessarily investigate and monitor and evaluate what they're doing and why they're saying things. So I think it's what we're seeing now is that more people are actually acknowledging that actually what is happening, even though I'm white, this is a true reality and this is wrong. Whereas first it was like, well, that's just how it is because of all these histories and legacies of slavery and colonism that people just think that's just how it is.
Mm.
So yeah, it's a complex dynamic, and I think there's lots of research that shows how racism impacts mental health, that there is institutional racism, but as long as people are not willing to open their eyes and also try to see what we are saying and hear our
Mm.
voices, it will be hard for them to investigate. Okay, so maybe there are certain beliefs that I have about Black people. Maybe I do pick the white person over someone else, and I actually don't really have a really great idea about why I'm doing it, or maybe I have an implicit belief that I'm thinking, oh, maybe she won't really know, what we should do in this team, so I'll rather choose the white person. There are all these things, but you have to be open-minded to kind of really want to recognize and look at that. But I think part of white supremacy is also the difficulty of acknowledging that you have those beliefs. It's a
Mm.
discomfort. It's a very uncomfortable feeling that actually you will have those beliefs.
Yeah.
So yeah.